I have an MP in front of me right now. I have Maria Caulfield out. MP for Lewis, hello.
Hello, good morning.
You like the jingles, yeah?
I do, I love the jingles.
You haven't got the mince pie, have you?
No, I have got some little treats though.
You've got some
little to keep me going.
Well, it's what every MP needs is a few treats, isn't it, really? Christmas is coming, but it's not Christmas really as far as the trains are concerned, is it?
No, it definitely isn't. No, it's the same old story, unfortunately. And I was hopeful this week with the ACAS talks that there would be a breakthrough between the unions and Southern Rail, and unfortunately they ended yesterday with no resolution. So we've got another strike, full-out strike today. Certainly in my constituency, no trains at all for passengers. So it's a dreadful situation, and one that I've raised many times with the Secretary of State. He did intervene last week to get them back round the table, but those talks haven't worked. And for me, while I understand the rail unions and RMT and ASLEF have issues, for me striking isn't the way to deal with those.
Do you actually have any faith in the Secretary of State for Transport?
Well, I do, but I do think they need to intervene more. He started last week by getting them back round the table for talks. Those talks have failed, and I understand that there are discussions being had as to what the next step will be. So I think we will see more action, but it's long overdue, and I've been calling for it for quite a long time now.
The reason I say is that, lots of the passengers are really, really, really unhappy with what's going on, and Chris Grading has been literally quite happily union bashing. Blaming quite squarely the unions for this, when clearly there's a lot more going on with this particular event. It's been going on for months and months and months now. It's not just about closing the train doors, is it?
Well, that's what the dispute is about, but there's three aspects to this, and I'm a fellow commuter as well. I commute up to London. I've had to spend the week in London, not being able to get back each night and see my family, so I completely understand how tiring that's been for the last 18 months for passengers. But there's three aspects to this. First is the dispute, which is a union issue around closing the doors, and my message to the unions is just get back round that table, because striking is not going to resolve your dispute. The second is the performance of Southern Rail, which I think is what you're alluding to, which has been absolutely appalling over the last 18 months, the worst performing rail operator in the country. And for me, we need to either strip that franchise or change that management. But the difficulty is, while that dispute is on, that's very difficult to do because no one wants to touch that franchise. And the third aspect is Network Rail, which is causing 50% of delays at the moment when the trains do run, due to signal failures, rail problems, which is due to decades of lack of investment on that old Victorian line. And Chris Grading has made a change there in the last few weeks. He's brought in new management and put in a huge amount of investment to try and stop those problems that signal failure, the Three Bridges, Wivelsfield, we've all been there. But while the dispute is on, none of us are seeing the benefit of that.
All the other rail companies are dealing with similar problems in terms of Network Rail, but correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm not sure. We have the oldest track in the country, so we do hit more problems than most.
Correct me if I'm wrong, okay, on this point. It's not Network Rail, it's not Southern Rail that actually get the fares.
That's
is it?
Right, yeah.
It's actually the government. In this contract, it is the government that are getting them.
Absolutely.
I'm just trying to figure out here why the government is not doing more, or is this a political thing? Because they cannot, as you said, they cannot possibly re-let this franchise while this dispute is going on, and they're not going to solve this dispute, are they? With the attitude that's being taken. What is really going on here? Because, as I said, it's not really about the closing of doors.
Yeah, you're right. This contract is one of the only ones in the country like this. Every other contract on the rail lines, the operator collects the fares, and if they lose fares, then they feel the pinch. In this one, Southern are really managing agents, and so when passengers aren't travelling, they're not actually losing money. So there is a big issue with the contract, and I'm hoping if this franchise ends, we'll move away from that contract to a more traditional style.
Well, perhaps Chris Grading might like to listen to what these commuters had to say. It's a little clip of some of the commuters using the trains.
And I can't get to work, so it's ruining my business. It's despicable. It took me 3 hours to get to work this morning, and I'm sick to death of it. I feel I'm being robbed daily of my time, my money, my energy, and my dignity.
There you go. You see, that's just some of the comments from some of the commuters, and I'm sure you're in exactly the same boat. Does Chris Grading actually listen to this stuff? Is he really, really aware of the misery that as being caused by the action of the unions and also the actions of the Secretary of State for not intervening, bearing in mind it is the government that effectively run this franchise, not Southern.
Well, absolutely, and it's one of the reasons I joined with Caroline Lucas last week when she asked an urgent question the Secretary of State to ask him to intervene. And I did say in the House of Commons that I wasn't happy with the government's non-intervention in this because, we can't underestimate the devastation this is having on people's lives. In my area, we don't have a bus service in many parts of my constituency, so there's no alternative to the train. This isn't just people going up to London to work, this is people trying to get flights to Gatwick. We also depend heavily on visitors coming down to places like Seaford, to Lewis, and I know businesses there are down 30-40% because of this rail disruption. So this dispute and the problems with Southern Rail are having a huge effect on the constituency. And I have made it pretty clear to both the Secretary of State and to Paul Maynard that they need to intervene. We're starting to see that, and I think after the collapse of talks yesterday, I'm hoping we'll have another announcement today about exactly what the government's going to do to sort this.
They need to do something, because the other aspect to this whole thing, which I think is really probably one of the worst aspects of it, really, is the fact that the government announced price rises on fares. And, of course, the fares are due to go up in January at 1.8%. How, in God's name, can Southern, managed by the government, actually insist on having a 1.8% rise in fares when they cannot even produce a service? Was it 2,000 services cancelled now today and every day this week because of the strike? And normally there's 300 to 400 services cancelled every single day. This is not a service at all, is it?
No, it's not. And if you look at the performance figures of Southern compared to other rail operators across the country, operators like Virgin are at 98-99%. On a bad day, they're about 90%. We are consistently around 60%, and these are non-strike days, and on a bad day we go down to 40%, so less than half of the trains actually run on time. That is not a service. I'm pleased the government gave season ticket holders a month's fares back, but that's not enough.
It's not fares back, is it? It's a case, my point here is that how on earth can they actually justify increasing the price, let alone, because they're taking the money for the fares. How on earth can they justify this price rise? The Mayor of Uckfield was asked to write to Charles Horton, the Chief Exec of Southern Rail. She's done that, and also to Paul Maynard and to Chris Grayling. Nazgani was asked to sign the letter. You're now being asked to do the same thing. Would you actually join in with us and make a noise about the fact that there are price increases, and we want Southern to actually not implement those fare increases? Because people have got to pay for season tickets in January that they can't use. This is fraud almost.
It's not just season ticket holders. I've got many constituents who go to London 2 or 3 times a week, and so they buy individual daily tickets. So it's not just season ticket holders who are feeling the pinch here. And you're right, they're not getting the service they're paying for.
It's immoral. It's nothing. It's no other way of describing it. It is immoral.
Many of us have asked for a freeze on the fare increase, and actually, while the month's fare rebate was welcome, I think given that we've got 9 days now of no trains whatsoever in this area, we probably need more than that. And certainly for businesses like Plumpton Racecourse have got one of their biggest yearly events in the new year, their big race day with no trains. And if anyone knows Plumpton Racecourse, it's right by the train station. That's how most people get to races.
It needs somebody from Southern Rail to come out and actually openly say there will be no fare increase in January. We will exist on what we've got for now, and when the service has been resumed and is running normally, and we hit X target, then we'll look at the rise. This is what it actually needs, and
Southern don't actually get that fare increase.
No, this is the point. This is what I'm saying. It needs to come from Southern Rail. It needs to come from the Transport Secretary. At the moment, I think they're failing miserably, and for Chris Grayling to actually turn around and blame the union solely for this dispute is not doing him any favours.
No, I don't think the unions are solely to blame for the dispute, but I don't think strike action is the answer. And I think, we need to resolve the dispute. They've got some concerns which they are worried about, which haven't been addressed, but striking is not the way to resolve that. The only people that suffer is that it's not the government, it is passengers and residents, and particularly in this part of the world, we suffer more than most.
Well, we'll get you, you obviously know Nazgani, we'll get you in touch with her and get your signature on the bottom of this letter, all right? Thank you for that. We're going to move on now to the other big subject of the week, which is through government, is